Welcome to Chat Time. I'm Doron Basha. I have with me today an old friend, Scott Rosen, who actually we started together in the industry, I don't know, 30 years ago or something like that.
Or more.
We were sales reps for a company called North American Watch, which is today known as the Movado Group. Scott has since become quite the personality in the industry. He ran Hublot in the United States for a few years. He also ran Vacheron Constantin, and he was a distributor for TW Steel. So we'll just get into some of his experiences running these important brands and give you a little bit of a snapshot about how things function within the industry on the inside level, some of the interesting stories. I think you'll enjoy it. So we'll get right into it. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Good to see you again.
Always good to see you.
So you mentioned something that maybe we can open up with. We just came off the Basel show, which is the quintessential event of the industry. And the industry is going through changes and through growth pains. Maybe branding issues are a little bit different today. Give me a little bit of just a succinct impression about where branding in the watch business has been, where you think where is it going? What are the impressions that you've gotten as of late as to the changes of the industry and people's perceptions of high-end brands?
High-end brands, 2015, to use a diplomatic term, it was quite challenging. And I think it's because of normally many ethnic groups that live in the US or visit the US buy a lot of luxury products, whether they be Russians, Chinese, Latinos from South America.
They were instrumental in the high-end branding business.
They were always good, reliable clientele.
But we've seen this kind of trend before.
Correct.
In our tenure within the watch industry.
Correct.
I think we've had it within downturns within the global markets. The first thing that goes is the luxury business.
Correct.
Right? And
it happened back in 2009.
Yeah.
2015 was quite similar, a little different, a formula, of course, that caused the downturn.
The good news for everybody to note is that there might be new brands or old brands taking over, other brands. The bottom line is the industry is always here, and that goes to watches, it goes to cars, it goes to cigars. Mm-hmm. By the way, we are in a beautiful cigar bar in North Miami Beach, XM Cigar Bar, and we're shooting from here. So
it's a nice venue.
Nice venue, and also a luxury product in the same vein. So it'll ebb and flow and feel the changes of the world. Now, but you've had some interesting experiences with brands that are were very popular, but you've seen their rise. Let's talk about Hublot to start. Hublot was a brand, to give a little background to the viewers. Hublot was a small brand, originally owned by a private family. Carlo, and it was then brought. It was expanded on, maybe purchased by. Maybe you'll tell me a little bit about that.
Sure.
But Jean-Claude Biver came into the picture and created a watch called the Big Bang. And tell me a little bit about that experience when you came into Hublot.
So in 2004, Jean-Claude came aboard to Hublot. He was formerly, he's the one who recreated Blancpain watches back about 1980 or so. Sold that company to the Swatch Group, which is Omega, Tissot, Swatch, of course, and many other brands, Breguet, Blancpain. So Blancpain was purchased in 1991, I think. And then he headed up Omega for about a decade. Really helped with the growth of Omega through the 90s.
Right.
He left the company, joined Hublot about 2004. I always call him the Steve Jobs of the watch business. He recognized that if someone spent $2,000, $500 to $2,000 for a watch, they bought one watch every 5 years.
Right.
Or less. But people were buying anything that was $15,000, $20,000 and above.
Right.
These collectors, these people, watch collectors, were buying 3, 4, 5 10 a year. It just depends on the person.
Ironic, isn't it? That the higher the price, the more they would.
Yeah, they became expensive toys. So he came aboard to Hublot, worked with Mr. Croco, and he said, "Look, I'm going to change the company for you and make it a success." And he did. So he came out with the Big Bang, which was originally a design to be the Ferrari watch.
Okay, that's interesting. So that was a funny thing. So he originally designed Big Bang to do a partnership with Ferrari.
Yeah, Ferrari, the contract with Gerard Perregaux was over. Ferrari was looking at many brands, Panerai, Hublot, Audemars Piguet, and a couple of others, maybe
Right.
Omega,
Right.
to come up with a new Ferrari watch. So Jean-Claude, as being new to Hublot, he thought that's going to be a great way to relaunch the brand. So he came up with this look for the Ferrari watch. They lost the bidding. They have it now, but they lost the bidding back then to Panerai.
Right.
And so he thought, well, why don't I just use this new design and just
He had to
recreate Hublot.
go at it alone
And he came up
without
with,
Ferrari.
it's different metals and it's carbon fiber on the dial. It's Kevlar on the sides. It's gold and it's steel. And so why don't we call it Big Bang, because it's a watch of fusion. So he came up with the Big Bang, and he was right. It exploded. The difficulty at the beginning was because now they manufacture many of their own things in house. Movements, cases, and so forth. Back then, it was all because it was new. It was a supplier, a case supplier.
Why is that important? Why is that important that you have an in-house as opposed to supplier, and why is that so coveted?
Well,
within
it's
the
coveted.
industry?
It depends on the brand. It's coveted because if the brand is doing well, you want control over your quality as well as the supply of product you need. So if business, if you have a downturn of, let's say, 5% for 2016, you'll manufacture 5% less movements or
You're in
cases and so
control
forth.
of your destiny.
Much more control.
Yes.
But at that time, it was a big transition. So you have to, and when you're coming out with these products, you have to go to a case manufacturer and order so many cases, assuming, doing the budgets and assuming you'll need.
You're
1,000.
aggregating all the parts to a brand.
And then you're
watch.
assembling everything normally in your own factory.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, if a case supplier is behind, your deliveries for the month of November are behind, and then you lose business.
Right.
And some people go to buy another product because they can't wait anymore for your watch. So
control of your brand and also control of the quality of the components of your brand. Those two things are what's important for in-housing.
For sure.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's a lot of mimicking within other brands to what you brought in.
All the way down, sort of like trickle-down economics. It trickles down to brands like TW Steel, like Orefici.
Well, I would even venture to say that the existence of a brand like TW Steel, which is an oversized watch, that was the claim to fame was the size of the watch, right? All these large watches came to being because of what Hublot did at the time with the Big Bang.
Correct. There was already the Portuguese out by IWC for many years, but people sort of scratched their head and thought it's kind of too large.
Yeah.
Audemars Piguet did come out with the Offshore back in the 1990s, and it was a hit back then. But they still revered the Royal Oak, the original, which is still a classic and still being sold like crazy. But then you go to less expensive watches like TW Steel we mentioned, and so many other brands you see on people's wrists, like Mark's wrist here, and you see that it really influenced,
It influenced the size
to
of
watches
watches.
that are $500 retail, $1,200 and so forth.
The size, the materials are used, the colors, all of that.
It's really amazing.
And funny enough, actually, here we are in the XM cigar bar, and the owner is, wearing an AP, and I thought it was from a distance.
Thought it was a Big Bang.
It looked like it was a Big Bang because now there's bleeding between the two.
Exactly.
Going on. So it's quite interesting. But they're all unique. They're all individual. In the end, for a high-end branding luxury timepiece, can't be quartz.
Correct.
And it's the luxury aspect that brought the Swiss business back from the brink of the quartz industry, because if you're going to be a luxury expensive watch, you can't have a quartz movement in it. It has to be a mechanical art.
You can, but it's really it becomes more of a piece of jewelry with
if it's
which
gold,
tells time. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
I'm talking
so
about
like a lady's bracelet
right.
watch, a Chopin or Cartier. Nothing against those brands, but
it's forced. The idea was what I'm getting at is it forced the industry to come up with movements that are more relevant than just ticking the telling time. Movements that had to be more
complicated.
Complicated
And fun and different and interesting.
mechanical art, basically.
Right, exactly.
Mechanical art.
Exactly.
And that's what pulled them away from the differentiation with what quartz gives you and the fact that it might be more accurate, but on the luxury level, mechanical art is where the value is on the Swiss movements.
Well, quartz basically added a sort of a level of, became a disposable watch, to use
Right.
the phrase.
Right.
Even though it's not, a cheap plastic, $5 watch, which you could throw away when it doesn't work, it's cheaper to buy a new one than to have
It's
yours.
utilitarian. It's to tell time.
So, and we cut our teeth on the Concorde, and Concorde basically took, in the late 70s,
Right.
took the Royal Oak, the success of the Royal Oak,
Yeah.
came up with a watch called the Mariner SG.
Big
It was a
hit.
Steel watch,
Steel
gold
watch.
bezel.
Quartz.
And it was quartz.
And we sold millions of them.
And the Swiss finally came out with quartz movements on their own, and they started doing well with it. Well, Jean-Claude saw all that, and he decided to just make mechanical watches, because
Yeah.
he knew that the Swiss knew how to do this. When he took over Hublot in 2004, 2005, about 2 years later, they started coming out with limited series of different materials. So let's say they've never used tungsten before for a case. It's a very hard metal, and it's impossible to manufacture. But he found a source that can make his cases in tungsten. So let's limit these to 250, and that was a success. So
would you
there
say
was
he kind of introduced the concept of limited editions to the
I would
watch
say so,
industry?
yeah, for sure.
That's amazing.
Back in the 80s. I'm sure there might have been limited series back in the 30s and 40s.
But like everything
and
else, it's the
50s,
marketing
but
of it is a key. How do you market
again,
all that?
it's one of those. That's why I always compared him to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs used to say, "Don't make things that people want. Make things that people are going to want."
Will want.
So
Will
yeah,
want,
so he would come out with something that is intriguing and
a little bit ahead of the time, yeah.
And then exactly, and then put a lot of money in advertising behind it and do very well with it.
I think this is a good note to end on. I just want to. I did mention that you had your hand in the distribution of TW Steel. We talked about a little bit about that as well, and that was a bit of a lower end experience.
And then we wanted to talk about smartwatches.
We
today,
did, yes.
That's that sort of more feeds into the TW Steel and that price point of business. And
the smartwatches are definitely something to discuss. However, I'll tell you what, maybe you can come back when we have a discussion about smartwatches separately and how they affect, or they will affect, or how they have affected the industry. Sure. My personal feeling is that it will probably cause the industry to get better.
True, like we discussed.
But we'll talk about that because it is a huge entry into the watch business. For another time and another day.
All right.
Thanks for coming, brother. It was good to see you.
You too.
Thank you.